Alright, so here is our setup for the smoke photography. Um, you can see here that we have this little holder that's holding up this incense stick, and we have this flashlight right here that's actually mounted on a tripod. This is actually a very powerful flashlight, and all this is doing is it's illuminating the smoke so our camera can autofocus on that smoke. You can use any sort of light you want to, but a lamp or a flashlight works fine. And then we aren't going to be using this light to take the actual picture, because this light isn't actually powerful enough. What we're going to be using is this flash. And you can see here that there's rubber bands around the flash, and there's just these bits of card. And all the card does is it blocks the light from hitting the background, which is a black blanket mounted on the wall. And it also blocks the light from entering into the camera lens and causing lens flare. And here's the camera we're going to be using. It's a Nikon D300S, and it has this wireless flash trigger on it, which is the RF602. They actually came out with an RF603 that you can get now. But anyways, this is the transmitter. It just takes the flash signal and it points it to the flash that's mounted onto the receiver here. So whenever I push this button on this camera, that flash will go and illuminate all the smoke. And now we also have another light here. We have two different lights. We're not always going to be using this one. This is just kind of extra. I threw this in here. But you can use these colored gels in front of the lights. Here's another red one that you can put in front of that flash. But you can mix different colors, which is kind of interesting. So I'll show you some examples from just this flash being triggered, and I'll also show you some examples where we use both of the flashes with different colors. But other than that, if we just take our camera here, and you can see through the viewfinder sort of, but if we just autofocus on that tip right there and then go up and take a picture, you can see that the smoke shows up in the picture. You can't really see it because it's blurry, but it's there and it works. So, and the settings on my camera, just in case you're wondering, I'm using 1/60th of a second because that's a good shutter speed when you're working with flashes. On f8 I'm using that because f8 is the sharpest point on this lens. 90% of the time, f8 or f11 is the sharpest point on any given lens. And I'm just using large JPEGs, and I'm in manual mode. And my white balance is set to flash because I'm using the flash. And this flash is on full power, and it's on the narrow beam just to narrow the light coming to, so it strictly falls on the smoke. And that's that. A strategy that I like to use when photographing smoke is to zoom in on the interesting parts of the smoke. If you zoom out, the smoke isn't covering that much of the frame, so it's just not going to be as interesting. But you can do it either way. I mean, I always do it either way, but typically I usually zoom in. So I'll just show you a few examples here. I'm just going to zoom out all the way and autofocus on the tip of the incense, and that's the result that we get. Now we can crop that and use that. That wasn't too bad, actually. That example actually was kind of a good example, but let's just get some now zoomed in. So I'm just going to attempt to autofocus on the thickest part of the line here, and sometimes that can be tricky. You're going to have to get it so the line is pretty thick. You can always just alternatively zoom in on the incense stick as well, and then move your camera upward to take another photo. And of course, if the line is kind of just going straight up, just like it is right now, you can just blow it with your hand or blow it with your breath, whatever you want to do to fix that. And of course, if your camera is having a hard time autofocusing, try focusing on the point of the incense stick, the end point. And if those aren't coming out clear as you want them to, just go into manual focus and keep trying. That's what I'm going to do right now. And also, this goes without saying, but the closer the light source is to the smoke, the brighter the smoke will be. So that's ideal. Try to get it as close as possible without getting the card in the frame. So that's that. Let's go on the computer and see what we can do to make the smoke pictures more interesting. Alright, so let's just go over what we can do to improve these smoke photographs. Here's one that I took. Pretty standard. It's pretty zoomed in. But we can improve it. And here's how to do that. The first thing that you'll probably want to do in order to make the background 100% black is you're going to want to click Image, Adjustments, Levels. And now you can hold down your Alt key while clicking the left arrow there, and then just slowly drag it down until you see that the main part of white is on the actual smoke. So I'm just going to leave it around. You could go like that all the way down, but then it kind of erases the smoke a little bit. So if you just ease it in into where only the body is pretty much white, that is a good starting point. So I'm going to leave it at 4. And you can experiment with the midtones, but I usually don't do that, but you could just bump it up just a tiny bit. And then the very end here, hold down Alt, drag it in until you start to see those lines show up. And what you can do is you can let go of the Alt key and just look at it like this. But if you hold down the Alt key, and it's telling you where the highlights are and where it's blowing out. So I usually do it until I don't see anything. So right about here, that's the optimum point. And of course, the midtones, you can adjust those as well if you want to. And if you drag it all the way to the left, you can actually see little specks here and there. And I'm going to show you how to get rid of those. But for right now, let's just drag it back to somewhat near the middle, right about here. And click OK. So now we just went from this to this. Just fix it up just a tiny bit. And now to get rid of those specks, what I usually do is just grab the paintbrush tool and go to black and grab a pretty big, soft, actually a pretty hard, somewhat hard brush, just 50%, and just make that pretty large. And we're just going to paint in the places where the smoke is not apparent. So, and you can erase some of the smoke too, which is what I'm going to do. I'm just going to erase some of it right about here, just like that, and that's just going to get rid of those specks completely, the little pieces of dust and things like that that were either got on there from the lens flare or because of the background had some specks on the background. And here's a few more. In order to get rid of these ones, you can just continue to paint over them with black. Or if they're really tricky like this and you really want to get your image absolutely perfect, you can grab the spot healing brush tool and dim down the size a bit and just click on it just like so. I want to make sure the size is appropriate, just like that. That'll get rid of it. And you make sure that content aware is on there, and just keep clicking the certain points that you want to get rid of, and it will get rid of them for you. And you want to make sure, like with little tiny dots just like that, you want to make sure that you have the size appropriate to that dot so it doesn't mess up the picture. So let's just dim that down a bit. Right that there, that's good. No one knew that was there now. And so you can go in here and just fix things up until you get it absolutely perfect. but I'm not that much of a freak to actually do that right now. I wouldn't want to bore you with me just going and spending hours getting rid of all these little tiny specks. So far, that's our image, and here's the original, and here is the new one. Now to fix it up even more, we can click Image Auto Contrast. That always helps. And there it is. There it is, nice and spiffy looking. It's looking pretty good. There is a few more specs here, but of course, this is just a tutorial, and you get the picture. I mean, you just grab the paintbrush tool and paint over those. And now here's some things that you can do to make it more interesting. You can see that with this picture, I just took it with a regular flash. I wasn't using the 2 different colors of flash gels. I was just using a bare flash. But if you wanted to introduce color, what you can do is create a new layer down here. Grab the gradient tool right here and select either a color, 2 colors of your choice. I'm just going to pick teal, and I'm going to dim that down a bit actually, right about there. And another kind of a, I'll do like, I don't know, red or something of a different color. So here's our gradient, and now if we click the mode and make it on normal, we can simply drag and drop our mouse cursor down the picture, and it will create the gradient there. Then we can click right here and click hue, and that will change the color to this bottom layer using this layer, or we can click color, and that will also just do a slightly different version of it that's more pure. I tend to prefer hue just because it's more subtle, and it kind of looks more, I don't know how to put it, it just looks less fake. But this one, it's much more colorful and vibrant, so if you're into that type of thing, go for it. I like hue though, so I'm just going to stick it there just because it's a little bit more subtle. And there are other gradients as well. You're not limited to just 2 different colors. You can, if you wanted to, you have choices to make your own gradient, or you can maybe use a rainbow one and just get a whole range of different color there. But if you wanted to make your own gradient, what you would do is just click on the gradient bar right here, and then you can just mess around with these and put new colors in and take new colors out. To put a new color in, all you got to do is click down here anywhere, and it will create that color. And to remove a color, just drag and drop the ink thingy out of the lower bar. So that's that. I'm just going to click cancel because I don't really want to mess with that right now. But I would like to create maybe a blue and maybe a teal, blue to teal gradient. It's going to do that right there. I'm not sure why that didn't do it. I need to have this one selected. So you can drag and drop, and there you go. You can also do it the other way if you wanted to. And when you zoom in, it really does make a nice effect. And now there is another trick I want to show you, and that is called mirroring. We're going to mirror the image. So let's just go to another one here. I've just taken a bunch of these, but I'm going to use this one right here. And I haven't really fixed this one up yet. So what I'm going to do is grab my rectangular marquee tool, make a selection, and then crop by going to image crop, just to get that little white piece of card out of the bottom left corner there. And now I'm just going to click auto contrast just to quickly give it that boost. And now here's another quicker way. It's maybe not as effective as levels, but it's still very good. We're going to click image adjustments, selective color, and we're just going to dull down those blacks by selecting blacks here and then moving the black slider up just a little bit. If we go 100%, it's going to look pretty bad, but if we subtly just kind of do it at about 6%, click OK, and it looks better. We can also click auto contrast again, and so here's the before and here's the after. So now that we've got that done, I'm going to show you how to mirror it. To mirror the image, all we're going to do is drag the layer down to the new layer icon to duplicate it. Then we are going to press Ctrl T, and then we are going to right click inside of that selection and then click Flip Horizontal. Now you can see that it's flipped. Next, what we're going to do is click the blending mode and click Lighten, and you can see that it is now mirrored. We can also click Screen if we wanted to, and that will just make the brighter parts more bright when they come in contact with one another. But sometimes you can get blown out highlights when you do that, so I usually just leave it and stick it to Lighten. You can also hold down your Shift key and then rotate the image around to mirror it in different ways. So here you can see that it's mirrored across this axis right here. And we can flip it again, flip horizontal, and mirror it a different way, kind of diagonally there. Or we can flip it back up and back into its original state. Right now, I like it just like this, so I'm going to click Enter. So that's how you make a mirror image, and we can, if we wanted to, we could also just flatten this image by going to Layer, Flatten Image, duplicate it again, make sure that blending mode is on Lighten, press Ctrl T and rotate it around just like that, and mirror it again. We could also do the exact same thing right over again. So Lighten, Ctrl T, rotate it, and now look at that. It looks like a nice square design. And you can also compress this if you wanted to make something really abstract, and you get these really nice cool designs. So layer, flatten image, auto contrast. Another thing, if you just wanted to click auto tone or auto color, that sometimes produces some interesting results. This time it didn't, but maybe in another example it will. So I'll just show you some more examples here. Now here's one that's kind of interesting that I think that will look good mirrored when it's in square format. So what I'm going to do is just hold down Shift and the Alt key and grab my rectangular marquee tool and just make a square selection just like that. And I'm going to crop it. And now I'm going to duplicate the layer, press Ctrl T, and mirror it horizontally, and then make the blending mode lighten just like before. I'm going to push Enter to place that in there, and then I'm going to click Layer, Flatten Image to just put those two layers together, and then I'm going to do the exact same thing over again. Duplicate the layer, press Ctrl T, rotate it around while holding the Shift key to make it perfect, and then click here and then click Lighten. It's rotated, good. Push Enter to place that in there, and then click Layer, Flatten Image, and now I'll do it again. Lighten, Ctrl T, move it around just like that. And then we can also change the blending mode. Before we flatten the image, we could change the blending mode. Here it is when it looks like in Screen, Color Dodge, Linear Dodge. Lighter color looks pretty nice. So you can go through these and pick one that looks interesting to you. I just stick with Lighten by default because we are combining two different pictures that have a black background, and the object of interest is in lighter color. So I usually click Lighten and sometimes Screen, but usually Lighten in this circumstance. So after that's done, we can do it again, and this is going to be my last time because you can only do it so many times. So right about there is good. And we could click Multiply, but that actually does not produce a very good result. So you click Layer, Flatten Image, and Auto Contrast again just to clear things up. And then you can click Auto Tone. Like I said, that does produce some interesting results sometimes. In this circumstance it did. And you can also click Auto Color, and that will also sometimes produce an interesting result. I don't really like that result, so I'm just going to go back to here. And I think that looks pretty cool. Here's just some more examples. So, just some more here. In this picture, I had a green gel in front of the big flash and a red gel in front of the little flash. And if we just go in here and crop this, we can just see it a little bit better, nice and isolated. And to do that, I just pressed auto contrast, and that just fixed it. So you can see that sometimes you may want to use the different flash gels to introduce different color, or you may be satisfied with just using Photoshop to do that. So just to give a comparison, let's do it in Photoshop. Let's grab my brush tool here. I'm going to click Alt to select this color. You can see that it selected the color down there. And then I'm going to change these colors and select the green color that's right there. And I'm just holding Alt and then I'm clicking there to paste that color into there. And now I'm going to make the layer, I'm going to desaturate this layer. I'm going to go to Image Adjustments, Desaturate. And then I'm going to click Auto Contrast again just to boost it. Then I'm going to go back into this blank layer here. I'm going to grab my gradient tool, and I'm just going to place that just like that, and then click Hue, or Color actually. So here's the Photoshop version, and here is the regular using Flash Gel version. So that will just give you some perspective of what the difference is. They are actually very similar, but sometimes if you're using a flash, the way that the light hits the smoke can make it slightly different than what you could get out of Photoshop. So just keep that in mind. But overall, I think if you just use one flash and you're not using any flash gels, and you place a gradient in here later, after all, it's going to look totally fine. Now there is one last trick that I want to show you really quickly, and that would be simply pressing Control-I or Command-I if you're on a Mac. And look what happens when we do that. It inverts the layer. So it makes the colors opposite of what they really are. And of course we can do all the regular stuff that we could do with the regular version. We can add different colors in, make that color, and it changes the way the smoke looks. We can also flatten the image and just mirror it just like we did before, and it just looks pretty cool when it's inverted. I really like it when it's inverted. When you are stacking the image, you're always going to want to click either darken or multiply. I'm going to go with multiply. Yeah, I'm going to go with multiply in this circumstance. Just kind of place that in there really quickly. Layer, flatten image. I'm just going to crop this just so I can show you what it looks like when it's all mirrored. And just kind of move that over here. And you can get some pretty cool results out of that. So that's just something I wanted to tell you. Any picture, you can press Control-I on it, and it will just invert the colors and give you a pretty cool result. So, alright, and one more thing I want to show you before we just call it good. I wanted to show you some more pictures that I made where I kind of infused two different photographs in one. So if we zoom in here, we can see that this was a picture that I took of just my head looking up, and actually this incense was not originally in my mouth. If you zoom in very up close, you can see that that is actually not in there in reality. That was put there later on the computer. So that's actually an incense stick. But if you zoom out, you can't really tell. It looks real. So I just put that in there, and I made the background completely black on both images, and then I placed the smoke layer and the incense layer on there on the lighten blending mode, and that just gave me a result like this. It looks pretty cool. Here's another one where I inverted it and I made the background white on both layers. I desaturated the smoke to make it perfectly black, and then I just placed it in the same frame, and I made it look like the smoke was coming out of my finger. Here's another one, same thing. I made the background white, and I inverted the smoke layer, made it black, and then just used the multiply blending mode and put that right here so it looks like the smoke is coming out of the barrel of that pistol. One last one is the exact same thing. And here is another one, the very last one. This one, I actually used several different smoke pictures, and I placed them on top of one another. So there's probably one smoke picture around here where my cursor is kind of circling around. That was probably one smoke picture. And then I probably faded out the edges by using the eraser tool. And then I pasted another smoke picture right here where my cursor is going, and then finally another one right here. And it kind of makes it look like the smoke is just really just traveling way up there. The important part is to use the lighten blending mode and to make sure that the very bottom image has that little line of smoke that's just barely coming up, so it looks like it's coming out of your lips. And it's a pretty low-key picture. I probably made it darker, but I used a flash nonetheless in my bedroom, and then I faded out the edges up here, so this part was just totally black. So if you zoom in, you can see the entire picture, and it just looks really nice. And of course you could place a gradient over that if you wanted to give the smoke some color. And that's it. That's how you can add smoke into existing photographs.